for thanks for the invitation. Thanks to Miko as well for all she does. And yeah, welcome people who are joining. We're just starting, so don't worry. You'll have a chance to introduce yourselves and tell us a bit what you're expecting from the class. But I'm just going to say a couple words about myself and what the goals for today are. I'm Raphaël. I'm originally from Paris, but I live in Berlin. And yeah, I am an artist. I work with code mostly. Also, sometimes draw and do some other things. I also run an organization in Berlin called Creative Code Berlin. And for the last 10 years, we've been hosting 2 meetups every month, which are around creativity using code. I am also a Twitch streamer, as you can maybe tell from the setup. I stream twice a week about creative coding. I run a weekly challenge. Every week we have a topic that is selected by the community. I call it the Weekly Creative Code Challenge, a very original name, but at least you know what it is. And every Sunday I review the submissions from the community. It's a lot of fun. And on Tuesdays I do a stream called Creative Code News. Again, very original, where I look at anything interesting, exciting, inspiring that has happened, mostly on Twitter. And I collect everything into some show notes and we go through that, and I go on wild tangents that have nothing to do with creative coding. And you can find me on Twitch at SableRaph, same handle I use pretty much everywhere. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And a new thing since the last time I did this class, starting in August last year, I'm also working for the Processing Foundation as a processing community lead fellow. I am responsible for making sure that people have a good time when they get involved with processing, not specifically P5JS, which is the tool we're going to use today, which is also supported by the Processing Foundation, but I also work closely with the project leads that are taking care of P5 related stuff. So if you have any questions about processing of P5, I either will be able to answer or will be able to find you someone who knows the answer. But today we're going to use P5JS, and I'll explain why in a minute. So yeah, the goals for this class are, first of all, to give you a first taste, well, maybe a second, maybe I don't know, but to give you a taste of creative coding. I know that some of you already quite familiar with the concept, or even have a first-hand experience like this collective. But hopefully that will still be interesting and entertaining, even if you already have some of the basics or even are a bit more advanced. Maybe you can help answer questions in the chat if you already know the answers. I'd be very grateful for that. And the other thing is, which is related, is I want to show you, and you can tell me at any point if I'm succeeding or not. I want to show you that code can be fun and it doesn't have to be scary. I know that it can feel scary when you think about programming, when you think about computer programming, computer code. It feels like this arcane magic that maybe you heard about it in school, maybe somebody tried to teach you at some point, or you read or heard stuff and it felt like, that's not for me, that's too hard. And I certainly felt this way at some points in my life. And fortunately, there are ways to approach coding, and creative coding is one such way that I hope, make it a little more approachable. So yeah, that's it for my introduction. Once again, I'm Raphaël, calling here from Berlin, and I'll let Boya, if you don't mind, handling some speaking order for people, because I don't have the list of everybody easily. And just in a couple words, tell us who you are and what your expectations are for this particular class.
Absolutely. So let's start with alphabetical order, I guess. So Andres Sen, would you like to present your work and yourself? I can see that you unmuted yourself, but we can't hear you.
Maybe we go to the next person until Andres can fix their audio. Or you can also
Yes.
write in the chat. If you don't want to speak, by the way, feel free to, don't feel any pressure to unmute, but you can also write us a short intro or any questions you have in the chat.
And I will read
Yeah.
them out loud, yes.
Mm-hmm. So who's next?
Next, we have Basil Taleb. Basil, you want to join in? He's typing.
I think they're typing, yeah. So let's go to the next person and we'll read the message afterwards.
Okay, the next person is Christian Bock.
Raphael, and hey gang, I'm an experimental poet, and Raphael is one of the reasons I'm here. I love his work and certainly admire the quality of the artworks that he makes with code. He's among the first people I've ever collected on FX Hash, and he's inspired my own poetic activity, and I'm grateful to be here to learn some basics in order to I guess, reinforce my interest in trying to use these tools for artistic purposes. Thanks for being here.
Thanks. It's very nice to see you and hear you here. Yeah, who's next?
Next, we have Connie Bakshi.
Hello. So I'm Connie. I'm an artist that, I work with a lot of different technologies, but most recently these days, I'm predominantly working with machine learning and AI to just talk about the invisible binaries and the forces and systems that ultimately shape us. I talk about otherhood and kind of post-colonial realities quite a bit. But I'm especially excited about this class because this is an area of code that I've not yet explored, and I'm all about expanding my tool sets and kind of figuring out the territories in which I can play.
Wonderful. I hope we'll provide that.
Next, we have Dist Collective.
We couldn't decide who's going first. Hey, this is Bilge from Dist, and I am very happy to see you again and hear your voice. It was a pleasure meeting you on Valencia, and it was. I think Raphael is one of the persons who you can meet and just instantly get lots of information. He was just very helpful in terms of how he's just brilliant in terms of how he's approaching to generative art, I would say. And I'm very I'm really excited to what we are going to do today with Interact. We're going to do something interactive, I hope. And then I'm really excited to see what we're going to do.
Fantastic. And next, we have Danielle King.
I would speak too.
Fantastic,
maybe.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Yes,
no,
so
now
sorry.
I have a microphone. So yeah. Hi, Rafael. I'm Mulgan, as you know, from this collective, and actually, I'm today very excited for this class because just today I figured out how to use FX Lens, and I started to get involved with FX params. So today was a challenge for me because it was like a more I needed to think more interactively rather than like a more generatively. I must say so. I need some new ideas today, so I'm expecting this. Yeah, and thank you for this class.
Fantastic. Nice to see you again.
Hi, I'm Danielle. I sort of came into this space as a generative art collector, and I actually own a couple of your FX Hash pieces, so I'm very excited to have you be my teacher today. I'm trained as a photographer, and my work lately has been using AI technology to explore sort of alternate art histories, timelines, exploring the concept of medium. And I'd be excited to try to incorporate some creative coding into my work. I am doing a drop with Emergent Properties. It's a generative AI platform, but I have coders helping me with the actual coding part of that, and I'm contributing the AI part. So I feel like this will be like super helpful for me to get at least a fundamental understanding of what might go into creative coding. So very excited to be here. Thank you.
Beautiful. And next we have Eva, sorry.
Hello, friends. So my name is Eva. I am a digital artist. I create works that are inspired by the Bible, and I put emphasis on education in my works. For creative coding, honestly, I hope I will just be able to handle that. But also, I don't know if it counts, but I would love to learn how to create interactive NFTs, and if that's something we cover on this class, like if it's possible in Manifold as well, or if I need to use other smart contract platforms. That's something I would love to try. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, we'll talk about interactivity a little bit, but maybe you'll have to qualify what you mean with interactive NFTs, because it can mean different things. And you said custom contracts, so I'm thinking maybe you mean the more involved kind of interactive NFTs. But I want to take the opportunity to mention that this is just the first part of a two-part class. So next week we'll have, at the same time, same day, we'll have a more like the I really want to change the title, but it's called the advanced class. And it's just that today we're going to talk about creative coding basics, and next week we'll talk a bit more specifically about things that go into making a generative art NFT collection, and also possibly some more advanced stuff that will depend how much time we have. So I can't hear some of you, says Helio. Hopefully you can hear me. But yeah, let's. How many more people do we have for introductions?
So we are actually, Basil was able to write what he said, and I'm going to read it. Hi, I'm Basil, architect and artist, and I create generative art using Blender and Python. And I'm really looking forward to these workshops to expand my knowledge and learn new inspiring things.
Yeah,
Thanks,
Blender
Basil.
and Python. Amazing. That's something I want to learn. I've learned Blender, but not Python or the geometry nodes, which are very exciting. Yeah, wonderful. Is there anybody else who hasn't
We
introduced
do have
themselves?
a
Yeah.
few more people. So we have Helio, who is the one who just said that he can't hear some of us. Helio, can you speak to us? He's writing, and he's going to type. Okay, fantastic, Helio. We're going to get to you in a second. So the next one is Irina Angles, if you're able to speak.
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Irina. I'm a dancer and choreographer. And so this workshop will be for me super experimental, since I'm not a digital artist. I collaborate with different digital partners and create different artworks where I connect dancing with new medium, new digital art forms, different. And actually, my genesis NFT in general was with real-time creative coding artists. And I'm so interested in learning some, I don't know, approaches, tools to better understand how coding artists create their artworks or their products, projects. And so I'm not so much into technical part. I'm not technical at all, but I'm interested to learn and to expand my horizons. So thank you so much. I'm not sure I will understand everything, but I will try.
That's my goal, that anybody can understand it. So we're gonna take it from the start. Hopefully that will be okay for everybody. But you feel
Thank you,
free
sir.
to feel free to interrupt at any time if you want to, if you think I'm going too fast, or if you have some questions.
I will try my best to really understand everything.
Thanks. It's my job to make sure you do. So I want to
Thank you.
stress that out.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So two people have written down their information in the chat. First, we're going to start with Andres. Andres here. I'm creative coder, generative art. I use processing and P5.js. My interest in the class is learn as much as possible. And
Perfect.
And then the next person who wrote is Helio, who said, "Hi, I'm Helio Santos, working with creative coding, Python and processing, AI and painting, using computer vision as my main tool and the landscape as concept." And our next person is Luciana. If it's convenient for you to speak, welcome.
Hello. Sorry for the previous incident. My name is Luciana. I'm a visual artist from Argentina, and I don't know anything about coding, so I think this class will be a great way to introduce myself to creative coding, because it's something I would like to experiment in the future. So thank you for being here and for this class.
Great. Was that our last? No, there's one more.
One more, Marta Skinner, if you wish to join in, welcome.
Hi everybody. Hi, Raphael. Can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this. My background is in architecture. I'm working with really simple materials right now. I create spaces that are drawings and performances and installations. And through those, I playfully subvert and transform issues as works emerging as celebrations of life. My work is generative in an analog way. Each one of my projects is a sketch, which becomes an iteration for another piece. They repeat themselves and transform. I'm interested in infrastructure. I've always and how it sets up the framework for something to happen and to transform over time. I've always been interested in technology and just tools in general, just any tool at our disposal, and how to discover it and exploit it to our potential. I'm very drawn to numbers. I find numbers everywhere. Sometimes I can sit down and make relationships and find relationships and between these numbers and stories. I have several concepts for which I would love to have the perfect coder collaborator. And I'm excited that you are offering to make this very accessible. So that I will also gain some knowledge on how to take this on myself. Right now, I'm also interested in, my work is interactive and participatory, and very much interested in how things transform over time. So I would be very interested in setting things up in a way that the work does that. But I do have some current projects that I would that I need this knowledge or this collaboration for. Thank you.
Fantastic, thank you. And I see we have a last person presenting themselves in the chat.
Yes, it's Kashushu. So hi there, I'm Kashushu, a visual artist that uses shapes, both geometric and organic, to reimagine the human figure in landscapes. I've never used coding, but I'm super excited for the class and experiment with it in the future.
Wonderful. Thank you, Boya, for the help with the introductions. And with this out of the way, and thank you everybody for all your lovely introductions, let's get straight into it. So some people have mentioned a few words, a few times. You might have heard the words processing and P5. Those are two different tools, and I'm going to share my screen so we can start to talk about that. Starting with processing, which is not the tool that we are going to use today, but is a tool that is the sister project of P5. Processing is a tool that has been created by two coders, artists and coders from MIT 20 plus years ago. Oh, there's some sounds that are coming from Discord. And I remember last time we had that and it could be turned off. I don't know if Borja can fix this because it gets distracting. Yeah, it goes doo-doo-doo every few seconds. I'm not sure what it is.
I think this is people's connection to Discord. If you guys can go ahead to go to your notification settings and switch them off for Discord for this class so that we don't get the notifications, that would be lovely.
Yeah, thank you so much. Or maybe I can mute the channel, but no, I don't want to mute the channel. Or is it something that would work?
Boyra, did I do it? What did you ask us to do? I'm not sure.
So what you need to do is to go to your left and the gear icon, which is user settings. And when you go there, you should have, let me go in myself.
I did mute the channel and I don't hear it anymore. So maybe it was just on my end. We'll see. Don't worry about it. So yeah, so just to get back to processing, it's a tool that's been around for a long time, and it was created to make it easier for visual artists and creators and designers. Initially artists, but yeah, also designers and all people who think visually to get into coding with a very easy to understand program. And processing looks like this. I'm gonna turn on the processing editor. And you'll see quickly that it has a lot of similarities with P5 that we're going to use in a moment. Okay. Okay, no, I still hear the sound, so maybe people do need to turn off notification.
Just so you know, I'm not hearing it on my end. It's possible that it's just with you.
Okay. Yeah, not sure how.
Wait, Danielle said that she also hears it. So I would suggest, let me just share, everyone, if it's possible to go to user settings for Discord, wherever you find yours to be. It usually is right next to your avatar on the bottom left. It's the gear setting that says user settings. And if you scroll down, you're going to see notifications. And it would be lovely if you guys could switch off the desktop notifications.
I think I found it in notifications. There is disable all notification sounds. So that I just did that, and hopefully that should cover it. Okay, cool. Sorry for that. Yeah, so as you can see, processing is this a very simple text editor compared to some of the more advanced coding environments. It is trying to be as friendly as possible. You write your code in here and then you press a play button, and that's processing. Processing is still being actively developed. It has a strong community, and it has there are some really good reasons why you might want to use processing. It runs on your machine, not inside of a browser. It runs directly on your desktop. And I've heard people talk about installation work for installations, for things that are a little more demanding. Processing is often the better choice. It also can run on Android and run directly on a Raspberry Pi, for example. So it has a lot to offer. The reason why we're going to use P5 today is because it runs in a browser, and it runs in a browser. So that's the main reason. It is the good choice, the best choice for things like FX hash, for example, generative art in the browser. Most NFT projects run in a browser, and if you want to make a piece that is gonna create the visuals dynamically inside of the browser as the viewer sees it, as opposed to generating a PNG or JPEG image and then putting it on, like minting it on some platform, which you can do with processing, absolutely, and is also like a perfectly valid way to go about it. But I want to teach you how to make things that you could eventually mint as code, like mint the code directly, not mint the output of the code. I hope that's a distinction that makes sense. And if it doesn't right now, hopefully it will eventually. All right. So if you want to follow along, by the way, I mean, it might be tricky if you have the one screen that you're using to watch this. But if you have the opportunity, you can go to editor.p5js.org, and this is the tool that we're going to use to do this whole introduction. So, and actually, I might want to log in so that we can save things. You don't have to log in, but if you want to save your sketch, which is how we call a program in both processing and P5JS, you need to be logged in. You see, like as I log in, my code goes into dark mode. I'm going to keep it in light mode because that's the default. And yeah, so you can have your settings and they get saved for your account. All right, so I hope this is not too overwhelming already, but we're going to break down what we're seeing right now. And for people who already have used processing, already have used P5, this is going to feel very, very basic, but it's extremely important for people who have never coded to really understand all of those elements that we see on screen right now, at least the ones that are relevant. So you can see here, we have on the left the editor, and this is where your code is written. As you can see here, as opposed to the way it was in processing, we already have a little bit of code that is written. That is essentially almost the simplest sketch that you can make. It's called a sketch, by the way. I mentioned that in passing, but it's called a sketch because the metaphor that processing was going for and that it has carried on to P5JS is that your programs are like sketches in the sense of a drawing, because these tools, processing and P5JS, they really insist on exploration. And that's really what creative coding is. I didn't take time to really define it, so just like, yeah, creative coding. There are several ways to approach coding, and the typical way that you see in tech companies, they define specifications, they're trying to solve for a specific problem, and then they get into meetings, and then they create user stories and whatever, and then they have developers have these specific features that they try to implement. In creative coding, it's a little bit different. Similar things can happen, and for larger projects, it might be a good idea to organize work that way. But creative coding at its core is more about exploration, and it's more about trying things and getting inspiration on the way, as you would with a pen on the page. If you're doing something like some doodling, you might draw a line and see like, oh, this looks a bit like a cat, and then you add a tail and some eyes, and that's a little bit what creative coding in its purest form is like. So yeah, with this this parenthesis closed, yeah, we have our code. I'll explain what those words mean in a second. We have a play button, and you can already press it. And if we press the button, you see that something happens on the right, this is the preview, and this is where our visuals are going to happen. So anything that we write on the left are the instructions that are going to create the visuals on the right. And you see there are already some instructions, and they define what we see on the right. So what do you think those instructions mean? Anybody, feel free to unmute and tell me, like, your best guess at what all these words mean. And I will explain it. If nobody gets it, it's fine. But I'm sure some of you have ideas.
A bit of software tells us to create a canvas, a certain dimension, I presume 400 pixels square, and draws a field that has probably some background color that's identified by a numerical code, probably determining the grayscale of it. That's my guess.
That's everybody. Big applause. It's exactly that. Spot on. So we have this instruction here that says create canvas. It's pretty explicit. It's creating the canvas. That's the space on the screen in which we're going to draw stuff. And as Christian was saying, those are the dimensions, and precisely 400 by 400 pixels. And here, background is another instruction. Actually, those are called functions in programming. And this is a numerical value that defines the grayscale of the background. And you can have fun changing this value and running it again. And you see that if the value is lower, it's going to get darker. If I put it somewhere in the middle, it's a darker shade of gray. And I don't know, I can write like whatever number and run it. But at some point it gets white, and it doesn't matter how big I make it. It's just white. So yeah, well, I'm getting into the coding now. I shouldn't have done that. I haven't finished explaining all the stuff. So I can stop the sketch as well, and we go back to our empty preview window. And here, auto refresh. Well, this is kind of makes sense. So if I run it and I change, oh yeah, I don't even need to save. So I just change the values here. And it changes automatically. So it looks like you might always want to have it like this, but if you make a mistake in your code, that might crash your browser. So you might not want to have it on all the time. I'm going to actually turn it off because I tend to write stuff and then I shoot myself in the foot. So I'm going to keep it off. Here is the title. So it's random 2 words that get generated. Understood Munchkin. Sure. I typically rename my sketch with the date of the day. 2023-02-27 is today, and some explanation of what it is. So introduction, creative coding, VCA, let's call it that. So I can remember when I go to File and Open. And here you will see like the list of all the sketch that you've made in the past. And so with this title, I will be able to remember what it is, hopefully. There's more to it. There's collections, there's assets, but you don't have to think about this too much right now. Then you have your name here. This is the settings, as like you probably familiar from other tools. I mean, Discord also uses a gear icon. So yeah, you can set the size of the text. You can set your dark mode. There are some accessibility options. And yeah, that's we don't really need to get into those details. But yeah, if you want to explore those, feel free. In Edit, we'll see some interesting options. Find, you can search. So if I'm searching background, it's going to highlight it. Nothing too unusual. Tidy code right now does nothing because I haven't changed anything. But if I set my layout in a weird way, I can do tidy code. Those two are equivalent. Like this code would still run, but it's not how you organize your code. So if we want it to look clean and neat, you can run the tidy code thing. Replace is just like search and replace. In Sketch, we can add a file. So if you want to import an image or something like this, you'll find in there, add folder. Actually, all of this is kind of weird because you only see this one file. But if I go and click on this arrow here, I will see several files. We're only going to concern ourselves today with the sketch.js. That's where the JavaScript code lives, because P5.js is based on a language called JavaScript that is basically running the internet as you know it. This index.html is defining the structure of the page that contains the canvas, and style.css is the style of the page. But right now, we don't really need to think about this. If you get more deeper into making sketches with JavaScript or with P5.js, you might want to learn to use a basic CSS and basic HTML, because that will help you do some more advanced things. But today we're not going to think about it too much. We might use this if we import assets, but that's all. And finally, in help, you have some keyboard shortcuts. You can find them there. The reference, well, now this is important. So yeah, this is where you're going to find all the information that you need about the keywords that exist in the language in P5. So in P5.js, there's a bunch of words that exist. You've seen already a bunch of them: create canvas and background. I'll get back to function setup and function draw in a second. But if we wanted to know what background does, we could type background here, click on the first option that appears, and here you see how to draw various colors, and it explains also various type of ways that you can input data into the background function. So right now we're at the simplest mode, that is just give it one number and that will be a grayscale value. But if we wanted to do colors, we could input 3 numbers, and those would be R, G, and B values. What do you think those mean? Does it say it somewhere? No, it doesn't. So it's a good quiz. What does R, G, and B mean? If you already know, don't say it. But if you want to try and guess. Anybody has a guess? Otherwise, I'll just ask for someone who already knows the answer. But it's not as fun. No guesses? Is this still on? Okay, so somebody with the answer? Somebody who already knows the answer? RGB.
They represent the red, green, and blue values used on screen pixels, I guess.
Yeah, thanks, Christian. So yeah, a screen. So pixel close up. If we look at how a screen displays colors, if you're like a millennial, you probably remember looking at a screen and seeing those. But now they're so small, they're kind of hard to see. But yeah, even your computer that you're looking at, or your phone, or your tablet that you're looking at right now, the smallest. Sometimes if there's a drop of water on it, you might see them, but because it acts as a lens. Yeah, that's a computer displays colors by varying the brightness of these subpixels that are red, green, and blue. And because our eyes also have receptors that perceive the colors red, green, and blue, that's how we see the world. We don't see infrared, we don't see ultraviolet, but we see those colors. And you can create the illusion of millions of colors by having small variations in the intensity of these colors. And that's what we specify here. You're literally directly talking to the pixels in your screen and telling them to turn at various intensities, and that's how you get the colors. That's cool. What we still don't know is the range of those values, but I just realized there's one last element that I haven't talked about in this whole thing. Well, there's a few small ones, but there's one very important one. Can you tell me which one it is? It's right there on the screen. Anybody? What have I not mentioned yet? It's one
Is
big
it function?
That's a good point. Yes, I forgot to to explain this, but as part of the elements of the editor itself, like there's one area that we haven't covered yet. I see C patron is typing.
We actually
Nope.
came in late, so we might, whenever there is a moment, we might jump to her to ask her to present herself as well.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Who was that? Who wanted to introduce themselves?
Claudia Padron.
Oh yeah, yeah. Feel free to introduce yourself. Unmute or type in the chat, whichever you like. The question I asked people at the introductions was, what do you expect from? What are your expectations from this class? But yeah, in the meantime, the part that I haven't mentioned yet is the console. Well, that is there empty right now, and this is going to become useful in a moment when we start making mistakes. So here's a little teaser for you. All right. So if we want to know the range for these values here, we can either play around with them as we did before, like, oh, if I go down it goes black, and where does it stop, like when does it start being just black, and we can go high and it gets brighter white, and then at some point it stops. But if you want to know the exact range, well, the best way to do that is to go and check the reference. So right here it doesn't tell you, it just says it's integer values, whatever that means. That means whole numbers, actually. And but if we want to know the range, we can go here to the description, and it will tell you that it's going to sound a little nerdy, but bear with me. The default color space is RGB, with each value in the range from 0 to 255. So those are the magic numbers. So the darkest is going to be 0. That means your subpixels are turned off. And the brightest is going to be 255. That means it's full on. And if you turn them all on, either by having 255 in all three, and that's called parameters of the function, or if you just have one, and then your grayscale, it's going to be white. And there's no point in going higher than 255. It's not going to make it brighter. It's already as bright as it's going to get. And similarly, if you go down to 0, there is no reason to make it less than 0, like minus 10 is not going to be darker. It's as dark as it's going to get. Okay. And to finish, here are those final keywords that we haven't talked about: function, setup, and here function, draw. Any guess as to what those mean? This is a little bit harder if you don't know what's going on. Like, any guess as to what the reason for having this setup here and this draw here? Why is that? Don't be shy. It's fine, even if you don't have the right answer. Take a guess.
You need to actually prepare the software for a particular function. You actually have to say, in this little section of the program, we have to actually establish the parameters for the space within which we work. We have to create a canvas. We have to do that first. And then when you want to draw something, you actually have to tell the bit of software that for this sequence, for this little interval in the program, you're going to be functioning within this set of parameters, that you have to do these chores. Everything in that section will be just regarded as a draw function, no matter what kind of piece of code you put into it. And then you have to switch out to a new set of parameters, a new set of instructions, a new space of instructions, and to prepare the computer to do this, prepare the software to do whatever it's instructed to do.
So that's a good guess. In a way, it's right. but it's missing a key thing that you could know if you haven't done it before. So it was a bit of a trick question. But what happens is that the setup function, as you said, you have to do it first. That I think that's the closest you got to the right answer. So there are things that you want to do first, and actually you want to do them once. And so what's going on is that anything that you put in between those curly braces here, it's a block, it's a scope, don't have to remember these words, but it's like a block of code that is going to be executed once. So it runs once. And then you have the draw, and the draw runs again and again and again as fast as possible, which is actually 60 frames per second. I think that's the basic frame rate that it's trying to hit. So right now, it doesn't really show, because what's going on is we're just drawing the background, and 60 times per second, we're drawing the background again. So if we drew the background in the setup, which we can totally do, so I could cut and paste this here, it would look exactly the same. But it wouldn't be the same, and we'll see this in a second. So now I can add another instruction to that block of code. After the background, I could say I want to draw a circle. And here again, like if I run this, here I'm getting something in the console. I mentioned that this was going to happen soon when we made a mistake. Here it's a friendly error that is raised. This is literally called the friendly error system, which gives us a humanly readable error, which doesn't always happen with programming languages. Sometimes it's like some kind of esoteric message from the gods that you don't understand. Here it's trying to give us something really, really clear. So P5.js says sketch.js, so it gives you the name of the file, line 8, okay, that's the number of the line. See, the lines are numbered, so that makes it very convenient to find where the error is. Circle, the function, was expecting at least 3 arguments. And I talked about parameters, but these are actually arguments when we look at them from that side. And received 0. So yeah, in fact, that's true. I put no arguments in the function, and it expected 3. And it also gives us the link to the reference, so we don't even have to go and search for it. I can just click and go to circle, and you can see, yes, it's expecting 3 numbers, 3 whole numbers. And we can go to either read the description here, or even more convenient, go to the syntax. And here you see that it has 3 parameters, x, y, and d. And I could ask you to guess what those mean, but they are already written there, so you don't have to. X coordinate of the center of the circle, y coordinate of the center of the circle, and diameter of the circle. So x and y coordinates, that's something that's going to come up a lot in anything creative coding. This is the what's called the coordinate system. And if you remember from way back when you were studying geometry in class, maybe you went to math class and you have some fuzzy memory of like some lines that, like a horizontal line and a vertical line that cross each other at a right angle, and then they put some numbers, and then you put a dot, or maybe you put a line. This is what it is. It's how you define, you partition the space with numbers, and you say, like, I want to place something in a particular position. So just, to get a sense of that, we're going to put it at the 0, 0 coordinate, and we're going to give it a diameter of, I don't know, let's say 50. And let's see what happens. So what happens is that our circle is there in the top left. Actually, one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the background gray so we can see things better. So yeah, so 0, 0 is maybe not where you expect it to be. Very often in math class, the 0, 0 is right there in the middle of your page. Here, the 0, 0 is at the top left. So if I wanted to put this in the center of the canvas, what what kind of values should I put in the arguments, in the first two arguments?
200 and 200.
Sounds about right. Yeah, perfect. Well, that's convenient. Now, let's say I didn't want my canvas to be 400 by 400 anymore, which is 200 by 200. Yeah, that's half, so it tracks. Now, if I wanted my canvas to be bigger, I could make it 600 by 600. It's a nice number. And now it's not in the center anymore, right? That's a problem. I'm gonna make my text bigger and my window smaller so we have more space to play with. So what if I wanted my circle to be always in the center, no matter how big or small the canvas is? And you will need something I haven't shown you yet, but you can try to guess. How would I keep it centered even if the size changes?
Is there a command to automatically center an object?
That's a good guess. In some other language,
variable, like use a variable to define the scale of the canvas, and you just situate the circle by manipulating that variable by just say dividing variables by 2. So I know the width of the canvas, and I just say width divided by 2. Height of the canvas, I just say height divided by 2, and that'll place me in the center all the time.
Yeah, that's precisely it. So P5JS doesn't give you like a center comment per se. You have to make it yourself in this particular case. So, but yeah, so what it does give you, and we can search for it in the reference, is it does give you something called width. And width is what's called a system variable that stores the width of the drawing canvas. So the moment that we run create canvas in the setup, the width is going to be defined and the height is going to be defined as well. So I can do width and height and run it. And now it's at the bottom right. Let's make it a bit bigger so we see what we're doing better. And if I want to put it in the center, just like Christian said, I can divide it by 2. So the slash sign is a division. So divided by 2. So it's not exactly advanced math that we're doing right there, but yeah, that works. And now if I change it to some other value, say, we can go back to 400 here, but I could make this one bigger. It doesn't have to be a square. Now it's des centered. And if I make it 600 by 300, yeah, it's des in the middle. That's pretty convenient. Now, a special trick that I can show you is that there isn't just only setup and draw. There's other functions that P5 gives you. One such function is window resize. That's really helpful for anything NFTs, because people are not always going to look at your piece on the same screen, the same aspect ratio. Maybe it's inside of a small square on FX hash. Maybe it's full screen. This is very important, and I see a lot of artists mess that up. So I always make sure to show this first. What we can do is, and I think it's called resize canvas. Yeah, resize canvas. So you can see window resize canvas, window width, window height. Those are 2 other system variables that define the size of the window that the canvas is contained inside of. So we can go there, and actually I can copy this whole instruction here, set of instructions. And if I run this again, nothing happens. That's weird. Why would that be? Any guess? This is a tricky one, but you have you have all the elements on screen right now to guess why this doesn't work. This is a tricky question, but you can definitely find the answer. Any guesses? So we have set up here. We run it once. Call the function. Very good, Helio. That's half of the answer, but that's totally that is accurate. So when does this function window resize get called? We can look at the reference if we want.
It gets called too late. It has to be right at the start. It's part of the setup, presumably.
So yes, I think you both have like sort of two halves of the answers, but they're the wrong halves. But they overlap kind of, but we don't get 100% there, but that's the right direction. So it doesn't get called. And what the only thing that has been running in this sketch are setup that ran once and draw that has been running again and again. Window resized hasn't been called at all because it does get called when I resize the window. So it does work, but only if I start resizing the window. So we're missing one element, and that is that in the setup, we need to also define the size of the canvas based on the size of the window weight, no, window height. Yeah, and now it starts with the right values, and then it's going to change it dynamically. And see, because we have defined the position of our circle dynamically already, now it is also dynamically staying in the center. All right. Do we have any questions so far? It is both extremely basic, but also kind of tricky if that's your first time looking at code. So if you feel overwhelmed right now, that's totally normal, and feel absolutely free to ask any questions or ask me to repeat something or explain it with different words if I didn't explain it clearly enough the first time. That's your time. That's your moment. Don't wait until the end to ask about basic stuff because it will be too late. Because I'm going to go into some more complex stuff after that.
I noticed that the circle has a black perimeter, and that seems to be something that's built into the preconceptions of what a circle is. Could you manipulate that to eliminate that perimeter, for example, or change the color of the circle, do something to it that is more conducive to your creativity?
Yes, absolutely. So, okay, and we have a question also down there from Kashushu. So I'll answer your first question and then Kashushu's question. So yes, that's a very good question. P5.js has some defaults. They're similar to the defaults that you'd find in processing, actually, which is that, yeah, by default, we would have, actually processing, but let's not get into that. So by default, the shapes you draw have a white fill color, that's called a fill color, and a black stroke that is, I think, 1 pixel. And if I wanted to change this stroke around the shape, or the fill color for that matter, I would have to define this before I draw the circle. This is going to get very important. We haven't talked about the order in which things, we've talked about the fact that the setup runs once, the fact that the draw runs multiple times, but we haven't talked about the order, what's called the order of operations. So if I wanted to remove the stroke, it's as simple as writing no stroke, and notice the capital S, this matters. If I don't capitalize it, then it's not going to work. But here, no stroke, remove the stroke, and then it is conducive to more creativity, as you so eloquently put it. So yes, we can totally do that. I could also change the color of the stroke, the size of the stroke. Those are some basic instructions that you can do with P5. Now to answer Kashushu's question, you said you lost me with the brackets that have run again and again. How is that attained? So I'm not entirely sure I understand the question, but there are two things here. So one thing I haven't explained is what this is. This is a comment. So it is a piece of code that explains whatever you want to explain. You can write it for yourself. Typically, if you're collaborating with someone, you want them to be able to read your code and understand what it's doing. Ideally, you write the code in a way that is self-explanatory as much as possible, and then you add comments to explain why a piece of code is written the way that it is, or what it's supposed to be doing on a sort of more general level. But yes, you can use comments for this. Another way to use comments is to deactivate part of your code. Like if I wanted to deactivate the no stroke thing, you can see that now it's grayed out and it is ignored by P5 when it's running the code. It ignores the code, but it's still there. You can see it, and so I can turn it off and on in that way. That can be helpful for debugging, for, if there's a line of code you think is introducing a bug, you can comment it out and then see like, oh, the bug doesn't happen. Maybe that's probably where the issue is. And yes, you can use it for notes to yourself or to someone else. The other thing is, so you talked about the brackets. So yeah, I probably didn't explain this very well. So a function defines a function that is a specific block of code that has a name and that can be called from somewhere else. So anything I put in between those brackets, like here in this case, background, no stroke, circle, those instructions in that order, this is now called draw, and it is a function. And what you don't see here, and that's might be part of the confusion, is that we're not actually calling draw. We're not saying like, okay, call draw, then wait for a 60th of a second and then call it again, which is actually happening. And the reason we don't see it is because this is happening in P5.js. What is P5.js really? We haven't really explained it. P5.js is a JavaScript library. And the library is a collection of code. It's like a set of instructions that somebody else wrote so that you don't have to. The kind people who wrote P5.js have made it in a way that it has all sorts of convenient functions like a circle, like the no stroke, like background, like draw and setup. And all of those features are there for you to use. This is all done. It's all called here in the HTML. I said we wouldn't look at it, but just so that you know, you don't have to understand all of it. But here, just so you know I'm not lying, we're actually saying, this line is saying, I want to use the script in my document. I want to use the script P5.js, and it's stored at this address. And that's how we're importing P5.js. And you can see there's another line actually that is P5 sound. So you can also make sound with P5. But I don't think we'll really have much time to go into this unless there are specific questions about sound today. So yeah, so there's a lot of code that is actually that exists, but that you don't see. If you wanted to see it, you could copy paste this address, and you'll see that it actually is there. This is P5. This is what's going on. You see, there's a very tiny scroll bar here, and all of this is P5, and that's all code that you don't need to read, because it's there for you. You don't need to know what's going on in there. If you're into JavaScript and you want to learn, or maybe you even want to contribute to P5.js because it's an open source project, that means anybody can go and help fix bugs, help make it better. So this is you will be able to go and do that. Actually, not directly in this document. You would go to a place called GitHub, but let's not get into that. But yeah, anyone is welcome to go and participate and help improve P5.js. So yeah, I hope I answered the question. So yeah, just to get back to this. So the draw function is called from P5.js that is running in the browser as well. And every 60th of a second, it's going to call the draw function, and whatever you put in there is going to be executed as well. That is how it is organized. I hope that answered your question. Do we have any other questions before I get into maybe some interactive stuff or animation? We haven't animated anything, unless you consider this to be an animation, but that would be stretching it. I mean, I am stretching it. Just ask a question before I make more dad jokes, please. I see ABCD. Issues writing. Thanks for that answer my question. Good. Okay. So hopefully now you have an understanding of the basic structure, and this is going to be the structure of most sketches. There are a few more built-in functions. If you wanted to load an image, for example, you wouldn't do this in the setup. You would do this in another function called preload that is executed even before the setup happens to make sure the image is ready when we create the canvas and we do all the setup stuff. Or if you want to load any kind of loading happens in the preload. But yeah, for most things, you would have a setup, you would have a draw, and then maybe you have a window resize if you want to do such things. And if you want to do interaction, you might have a function to capture mouse input, to capture keyboard inputs. And then you can make your own functions as well that you would explicitly call. We probably won't get into this. But yeah, what you see on screen, if you only knew this and you looked at the reference, you could already do a lot of things. And hopefully you'll see by the end that we can already do some cool stuff with very basic elements. All right. So yeah, let's do some cool interactive stuff now. So what I could do is, if I wanted, I could move this circle. So we have something in P5 called frame count. That's a very nice built-in variable that I use a lot. That if I replaced the first value here of the circle with frame count, you'll see something cool happens. We have a James Bond aim already happening, moving, but it goes past. James Bond never appears, and then it goes away. So this value, frame count, it starts at 0, and every frame, so every 60th of a second, every image that we draw, the circle goes and gets that way. It moves to the right because the X value is increasing. And if you don't believe me, we can do something interesting. We can use console.log. That's a weird name. But what console.log does, very helpful. I do frame count. Again, I want to make sure I put the capital C. See if it doesn't. If I don't get capital C in there, I'm going to put the text bigger again. See, it's blue. That's not what we want. I want it to be pink. And that means it recognized it as one of those system variables that we talked about before. A variable, also, I realized I haven't really defined what a variable is. A variable is just like we said, a function was a set of code that has a name. A variable is a value that has a name. So a variable is a convenient way to access a specific bit of data that is stored somewhere in the memory of the computer. And the memory of the computer is labeled, like every part of the memory is labeled with a specific code, a number, but you don't want to have to remember these complex things. So you put a label on it and you say, like, point to this part of the memory of the computer, and I'm going to store my data in there, and then I can retrieve it later. For now, we haven't created our own variables. We're just using the ones that P5 uses, but you will see as I run the sketch again that in the console, And that's what console log is doing. It's writing stuff to the console. So here you see these numbers are going up and up and up. And we have piped these numbers into the X position. So as it goes, it gets higher and then it goes to the right. You see that logging to the console has made my sketch considerably slower. So I'm going to comment this out quickly. And now if I run it again, it's smooth again. So yeah, do we have any questions about that? Or is that clear so far? I've touched on a lot of, I introduced a lot of topics at the same time, so I hope it's not too overwhelming.
I've noticed, Raphaël, that there's variations in your syntax, that you've included spaces in some parameters. Is this a piece of software very forgiving of alterations in syntax?
Yes.
Like, is it easy to make a mistake? Like, easy to make a syntax error, or is it harder to make a syntax error?
Yeah, so JavaScript is quite forgiving. For example, like you can see that all the lines have a semicolon at the end, but if I didn't include it, it would still run. So in this way, it is forgiving. The spaces are mostly not significant, except if I did. No, actually, that's also fine. So yeah, so the spaces are mostly not significant unless you're breaking an existing keyword. Then it's not going to recognize it as a keyword. But I can add as many spaces as I want between I guess that's what's called tokens. So either like symbols like this or entire keywords. So each of these are unbreakable, but between them, whatever you want, it goes. But if I wanted to be consistent, then I could go and use the tidy code thing that we looked at earlier. And now it's all consistent. It's adding a space after the comma. And actually, this one didn't. I don't think it's going to change that. Oh yeah, it does. Okay. Well, there you go. The goal of this tidying is to make the code more readable. You can see it also put my comment below. It doesn't like that a comment is after code on the same line. But yeah, we had another question. I heard somebody start speaking before.
That was Danielle.
Yeah, hi. My question was just with the function that you just did where you made it move. If that were like to run, would it run over and over again, or does it just do that one movement and then that's it? Like, or would you have to put in another command if you wanted it to loop that movement? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, because the frame count number is just going up forever, the circle is moving to the right, exiting the canvas, and then it keeps going. So it's out. It's never going to be drawn again. Technically, in some platonic way, it exists somewhere. It's moving out forever, never to return. We could tell it to return. We could say like, I wasn't planning to talk about this quite just yet, but we could tell it if your position is above the width of the canvas, then return to 0, for example. Or we could use all sorts of other tricks. But yeah, you would have to explicitly tell it to loop.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Sure thing. Do we have any other questions? Otherwise, I'll move on to mouse interaction. All right, let's do that then. So one cool thing that we can do is use the mouse position. So if I go to the reference again, and the reference is going to be your best friend. You every time you're confused, and no matter how advanced you are, like every coder is always looking at the documentation. There's no one who's learned everything from memory and is never checking the docs. It's just the way it is. Nowadays, we even have AI assistants that can help us write code and so on. But it's basically the same idea. You don't want to have everything in your brain being a coder means being lazy. We're asking a machine to do stuff for us. So whenever we can be lazy, we're going to be lazy. So it's good to remember stuff. Don't get me wrong, but there's absolutely no shame in going and read the documentation. It's there for you. That it was written precisely so that you can go and check it when you need to. So here you can see that there's this mouse X. The reference of P5 is conveniently interactive in the places it needs to be. So here we see that we have a line that is following the mouse, and that's because mouse X has been put in the argument of the line function that defines the position of, well, actually it is put there twice, but that's just because a line is defined by 4 points, 4 extremities of the segment. The 2 extremities of the segment, each of which has 2 coordinates. Hope that makes sense. But here, because we have just our circle, I could do mouse X instead of frame count here, and now it's following my mouse. But it's only following it on the horizontal axis. See my cursor here? There. And that's... Yeah, so what if I wanted it to follow my mouse all the time? Like all the time, in both axes? That's an easier guess.
Yeah, you substitute for height mouse Y, presumably.
Yes, so mouse Y, exactly. And now we have a circle that follows the mouse. Amazing. Okay. One thing I'm going to do, because it's going to make the next step a bit easier to understand, I'm going to keep the stroke for now, but we can change it later. So, so yeah, hopefully now you see that draw is actually executed again and again. Because if it was running once, we would take the mouse position when we run it the first time, and then it wouldn't be moving. But here it is moving because we're drawing it again and again. A concept that is very important to understand is what we mean by drawing frames. Like, what is the draw loop actually doing, and why do we need to draw this background again and again? Like, why can't we just draw the background once in the setup? I mean, presumably, we draw the background, and then we draw the circle, and then we move the circle across the background, and it should be the same, right? What do you expect to happen if I put the background in the setup instead of in the draw before the circle? So see, I removed the no stroke, I moved the background in the setup. So we have setup, create the canvas, draw the background once, and then draw the circle in the draw again and again. Take a guess. Anyone? Wild guess. I'm not drawing the background in draw, I'm drawing it in setup. I'm drawing it once. And then I'm drawing the circle 60 times per second at the position of the mouse. So what's the circle gonna do? Sika Shushu's typing.
Would it leave like a trail on the background?
A trail. Interesting. Well, yes. Precisely. That was the answer I was looking for.
Cool. Good.
It's leaving a trail. And why is that? Why is it leaving a trail?
Because you're not redrawing, like you're redrawing that circle over and over and over, but the background is, I can't explain it, but
No, you explained it perfectly. Yeah. Absolutely. So we are not redrawing the background, and we're drawing the circle over and over itself. So if you think about it like layers, or you can think about it like traditional animations cells, if those make any sense to people anymore. It's like drawing on celluloids. like animation frames. It is literally animation frames. So yeah, it's like if you drew on a transparent layer. If you wanted to not see the layer before, you would have to draw the background. And yeah, if we had our onion skin thing that now they call in animation, onion skin. No, not that animation. Yeah, you'd see all the layers on top of each other, and that's precisely what's happening like this in animation, right? So where are we? I'm lost. Okay, so yeah, this is what's going on, and if I don't want that, then I need to erase everything we've drawn before, or rather, it's not even that we're erasing it so much as we're drawing over it, filling the whole page with the color that we want for the background. And we're still drawing the circle again and again, but because we're filling the whole canvas with gray every frame, then we don't see the trails, but conceptually they're still there. All right, cool. So that's, yeah, we made a huge step. Okay. So, I mean, maybe we want some color, maybe we want some interaction. If we want to make like a drawing tool, that could be fun. Yeah, do we have any questions on this particular thing? If you understood this, that's huge. That's really, really huge. Because everything that comes after that, it's really relying on this concept of frames, of drawing on top of frames. If we're animating things, if you're looking at the work of Zancan, for example, or somebody like Nat Sarkissian, they're using this effect a lot in their landscapes. Let's look at Nat Sarkissian. It's doing landscapes, and they're all based on this very technique. I'm a huge fan of this work in particular. Called California Hills in Late Sun. And yeah, if we run it, you'll see, hopefully you will. Yeah, there you go, it's happening. So it's drawing lots of little elements, and they get layered. Yeah, lots of little dots, little blades of grass. And because it's not redrawing the background, if we were redrawing the background, it would be very underwhelming. Here is drawing on top of itself, and as it goes, it creates a landscape. Of course,
it's kind of miraculous that the landscape looks exactly like the California hills too, under sunlight. It's really remarkable that he's managed to successfully convey that effect.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a basic technique, like we in less than an hour we already explained basically everything you need to know to understand how this works, except for all the artistry and mastery in deciding which color and which position to give each of those elements. And that's where all the beauty of this piece comes from. But yeah, essentially, like on a technical level, you understand almost everything about this piece now already. Yeah, I could watch this for hours, but we don't have hours, so I'm gonna go back to our code. Oh, I hope you weren't seeing the yellow tint on my screen. If you were, I apologize. Forgot to turn it off. So, yes, okay. Where did I want to go next? Colors. Yes, we could do colors. So, and yeah, we could do again the background, like I don't know, some values than what we were using before. Okay, well, why not? Some kind of a nice red, or maybe not. Looks kind of fascist. So let's go for something different. Okay, a little pink, a bit more pink. Yeah, that's better. So yeah, we have a color. I'm gonna bring back the no stroke thing because I agree with Christian. It makes things look a bit more neat. Yeah. See, now we have a stroke. I'm gonna make this smaller, and this is where you see like creative coding in action. That's the exploratory aspect. I'm tweaking parameters. I'm testing things, changing colors. Like, oh yeah, that looks kind of cool. And that's what we do. That's what we do all the time. One thing I noticed as well, I'm going to run it again. This is going to be helpful for especially if we're trying to do a drawing tool. We don't want to just draw the position of the mouse. As you can see, like if I move the mouse fast, then it's just living dots because I'm moving too fast. There's not enough, like the frame rate is too low for it to be a continuous line. So if I wanted it to be a continuous line, I would need to draw a line from the previous position of the mouse to the current position of the mouse. And that's not what I'm doing right now. I'm drawing a circle at the position of the mouse. So if I wanted to do that, well, great thing is P5 has us covered. Once again, it has a built-in variable that is called pmousex and pmousey for previous mouse x and previous mouse y. So we don't even have to store those values ourselves and to use it. So I could use the line function that we briefly saw before. I'm going to comment out the circle. I could probably delete it actually. And I'm going to draw actually, that's not it. Pmouse. Okay, yes, it's like that. It's not exactly consistent, but we're not gonna say anything about that. Mouse X, mouse Y. So I'm drawing a line between the previous position and the new position. Hopefully it works. Let's see. That did not work. So what's the problem there? Oh, I know why. Okay, yeah, this collective.
Yeah, the
you've
no stroke
spotted
function
it.
still functioning.
Yes, exactly. So the no stroke means because a circle is a fill and a stroke, but a line is just a stroke. So if we say no stroke line, that's just like, yeah, we're drawing an invisible line. That's not what we want. So yeah, there you go. And the stroke is black because the stroke is black by default, as we saw with the circle. So if we want it to be white or a different color, we'll have to specify this, the color of the stroke. And I'll show you how to do this just now. So if we want to define the color of the stroke, go stroke, and then set the color. So for example, white, 255, it's white. So we have already our little drawing tool. That's very cool. What color do you want to go with this pink? Can anybody suggest a color? Nice.
Lime green.
Lime green. Oh yeah, that's good. So there are several ways to pick a color. We could use a color picker, or we can try to eyeball it. If you know that R, G, and B means red, green, and blue, and in that order, RGB, red, green, blue. So the green is the second one. So I can do a fully, like completely green, no red, no blue, and it's going to be very green, like Gen Z green. Bam. And maybe that's what we want. I'm going to make the stroke a little bigger because it's very thin. There's a function called stroke weight that lets us define this, and it's in pixels. So let's make it 10 pixels. Yeah, there you go. And I find it hurts my eyes a little bit. So I think if we add a little blue and a little red, it might make it a little nicer. So let's say 50 blue and 10 red. Can experiment. Yeah, it's getting a little better. We reduce the amount of green. Yeah, it still clashes. It's still flashing a little bit on top of the pink. Like that. Yeah, okay, that's better. Still not perfect, but yeah, That's good. Green on pink. Wonderful. Okay. Any questions on this? You see previous mouse to current mouse equals a line, a continuous line. And just to be clear, previous mouse means the position of the mouse at the last frame. So every frame, the current mouse position is then put in the previous mouse position, so it changes every time, and it's one behind. And so we are like drawing a line between the previous and the next. Hopefully that makes sense. But one thing that's not great for a drawing tool is that it is we can't stop drawing. Or maybe that's great. Maybe we love that. But I'd like to be able to draw when I click on the mouse and stop drawing when I am not clicking on the mouse. So for this, we're gonna use a custom variable. We're gonna make our first variable. I hope you're excited, because I am. So if I want to make a variable, I can use keyword var for variable. And we're going to call it is drawing. All right. So I can do it like this, but I'd prefer to give it a default value, and we're going to call it false. Is drawing is false. So now if I run, nothing changes. Why is that? Because I define the variable, but I don't use it at all. So it's not doing anything. Now, if I want to apply this, we could use what is called a conditional. Remember, I mentioned that we could do if something, then do something. So what I can do is use an if and then set the value is drawing in there. Then I will put some curly braces and put the line inside there. And now it's not drawing anymore. And if I set is drawing to true, now it's drawing again. So that's a good start. But we want to be able to toggle this value whenever I click or release the mouse button. And I'll do this in a minute because I need to take a very quick pit stop. So don't go anywhere. Just give me a second. All right, I'm back. Your brain is about to freeze, Kashushu. I'm sorry. I hope this this impromptu break gave you a moment to cool down. Oh well, not to cool down because it's already frozen. Is it freezing or is it overheating? Okay. Do we have any questions on what I've just shown? We're gonna do one last thing, and then I'll take questions, and we can experiment on some other things based on your questions. But yeah, anything that's confusing so far, like in the last few minutes? All good? I will assume that everything was clear then. So yeah, so I was saying we have our variable is drawing that we can toggle to true or false, but I have to do it manually here, and that's not very convenient, is it? So if we want to do it when we click the mouse, there's a function for this in the reference. We can go to the reference again. Click. So I see mouse clicked method in P5 element. Mouse click method in P5. Yeah, we're gonna go for this one. So mouse clicked if value 0. Okay, no, that was for okay. So it is. We have a toggle, but it's every time I click, it toggles. That's not what I want. I want it to toggle when it's clicked and when it's not clicked. So what we could do then we have a function mouse clicked. Okay, so this is going to be called by P5 when it detects that I'm clicking the mouse. So function mouse clicked. Okay, here's our curly braces. And when it's clicked, we can do if is drawing. And this is going to be a pro gamer move right now. Triple equal true. Then is drawing equals false. Oh my. And then say like else is drawing equals true. Okay. So what's going on there? There are simpler ways to write this, but they are more confusing, so I'm going for this. If the variable is drawing is true, this is what this means. It's comparing those two, and if those two are the same, then it's going to be true. If those two are not the same, then it's going to be false. That's what the triple equal is for. The single equal is what's called a assignment operator, and that means that whatever we see on the right is going to be what we store in the variable on the left. So remember how I said a variable is pointing at a position in the memory of the computer where we can store some values, we can write some data. Well, this is the data that we want to write. This is the operator that tells the computer that we want to store it, and this is the name of the variable that we want to store it in. So it's like, where did we store is drawing? We don't have to worry about this. It's all handled by the computer for us. But all we have to know is that we gave this variable a name. We want to give it a value. This value is false. And it's false if isDrawing is already true. And if drawing is already false, then it's true. That's a toggle. So if it's true, it gets false. If it's false, it becomes true. Does that make sense? Basically, like a light switch. If your light switch is off, you want to turn it on. If your light switch is on, you want to turn it off. If it's already off and you try to turn it off, it's not going to be more off. It's already off. Make sense? Hopefully it does. So, and hopefully it works, because I don't know. Like, why is it? Oh, by default it's true. I want it to be false by default. By default it's false. And now if I click, oh, okay. So it's doing the thing I didn't want to do. So I have to, oh, I can't show you and do it. So now every time I click, it's toggling between the two. Okay, it's not great. It doesn't feel great. Because I have to click and release. Aha. So oh, there is an easier way to do this, just remembered. There is a much easier way to do this than doing this. So I'm going to remove it. We don't even need the variable. So silly. I don't even need this variable. But you learned what a variable is, so that was helpful. Yeah. I think there's something called mouse is clicked, or is clicked, or something like that. Clicked. Pressed. Mouse is pressed. That's a weird name. Mouse pressed. Yeah, so mouse pressed is a built-in variable. Oops. Mouse pressed instead of mouse is pressed. Oh. So it's mouse is pressed. Mouse is pressed. I should have known because it wasn't pink. So mouse is pressed. It's drawing. Mouse is not pressed. Oh yeah, much better. Okay. Yes. Great. Yeah. So now I can draw. Ah, amazing. There you go. That's what you want to see. Then this. Little legs. Little eyes. And a little wing. Yay. We have a burb. We have achieved burb. That's all you want. All right. Does it make sense? So if mouse is pressed, then we draw the line. if mouse is not pressed, well, we do nothing because that's just what the if tells us. So yeah, much more convenient. There are some cases where you will want to use the function mouse pressed, and that like you can do some more complex things with it that you couldn't do with mouse is pressed. But in this case, this is simpler, so I'm just gonna stick with that. All right, cool. We still have a little bit of time for questions. So yeah, let's go with that. Just anything that we haven't looked at that you want to know. We've looked at some very basic things, but you can already do a lot with what we've seen. There's lots that we haven't covered. Of course, you can't expect to learn all of programming in 2 hours, but yeah, just shoot. Go ahead.
Can I ask a quick question?
Of course.
So if you wanted to, say, turn this into some sort of generative project, and like you wanted to have a range of options for the background color, say, or the green line color, that would be a whole nother level of like adding lots of other commands to program it to do that, yes?
Yes, yes and no. We could do a very basic generative piece from this if we set a variable for the background. So let's call it background color. All right. And I'm not going to give it a value here, but I'm going to do it in the setup. So I could say, I need to do it before. I say background color equals, and here is the secret. Background color equals color random 255. And I'm going to do this 3 times because we want to do it for RG and B. Okay, and then I'm going to use it as the background. I think we can do this. Maybe it's new color, but I think that's the way. Okay, so now I run it, and the background is blue. Next time I run it, background is brown. Background is green. There you go. Generative canvas with a different color every time.
And so you could do that with the color of the pen too, like with the line.
Yeah.
If you wanted to. Cool.
Could do stroke color. That's my custom variable again. I only need to set it in the setup. If I don't want it to change randomly every time, I could do the same. Stroke color equals, and I'm going to use the same exact line. Going to pick a different random color. But it's still green, and that's because I'm not actually using the variable. That's a very common issue, common error, by the way, and something that gives me the opportunity to say something important as well. There are different kinds of mistakes that you can make in code. There are the ones that will mean that your code doesn't run, and those are the most frustrating ones in some ways, but also the easiest one to solve, because you would get a message in the console that tells you what's wrong. Sometimes you won't understand what it's saying, but you will get something. Actually, the more frustrating one, that's not true. The real frustrating ones is when you think you're doing something, but you're not, and the code still runs, but you don't know why it's not doing what you want. And in this case, it's a fairly easy one to solve. It's just that I'm not actually using the variable that I've declared and instantiated in the setup. I need to use it here in stroke. So now we're gonna get a different stroke, and every time it's different. And every time it's random. There might be, it might happen at some point, and especially if you have a lot of like big numbers of editions, that the background and the color are and the stroke color are the same, and that's not going to look very good. And that's where a lot of the artistry of doing a generative collection is defining parameters in a way that it always looks good, no matter what the random values are. And typically you won't use like completely random colors. You're going to say like, I want to define the color based on like the color of the stroke based on the color of the background. It could say like, use a hue wheel and say like, use color theory and say like, I want the complementary color. I want the background to be this color and the color of the stroke to be the complementary color to this one. That's something that's, totally doable. Any other question? I'm just going to keep doodling if you don't have questions.
Hello, I have a question. If you want to save it, how do we do that in order to display it, for example, in our PC or somewhere else?
So
how do I export the file?
As an image, for example?
Yes, for example, these interactive exercises. How can we save it?
So if you wanted to save the image, that's fairly straightforward. You can either right click. I mean, in this case, the problem is I'm drawing when I click. So I can do right click, save image as, and it's going to download it. And then I can open it, and there you have it. It's a PNG, download.png. If I wanted, I could also do it programmatically, and I could say like function key pressed. I'm just going to say like any key is pressed, save frame, I think is, or save. Is it just save? Might just be save. So save, and I think you can define the name like my image PNG. Is that how it works? I think. So then I press any key. Yeah, my image.png. So now it's saving this.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah. In this case, you might want to define a specific key, and you will find it in the reference. It will tell you how to detect which key. Okay, we have another question. Could we reach out after the class in case any questions? Yeah, of course. So you can find me on Discord. You can find me on Twitter. I'm happy to answer your questions. I will also give you some resources. I will share some resources with you so you can go further. I have a specific page with some tutorials and everything that you need. Actually, I can share it now.
Yeah, to follow up to that other question. That saving, you're saving a still image. Can you save the animation? How do you save the moving piece?
Yeah, so there is, and it's a fairly recent addition. It's very cool. There's a save GIF method that you can use, and if you're making it, you still have to make an animation. If you want it to loop, you have to make sure that it loops. But you can use save GIF, and then it's gonna save the animation. And right now it's not really animated, so there's not much animation to save. But yes, you can do that.
Thank you, and thank you for everything.
Sure thing. Anything else? There are tons of things that you can do, and actually, one thing I wanted to show, a common question is like, what do people make with it? I haven't really showed you that, and there's you can find some cool examples of things that people have made with P5 on the P5 Showcase. P5 Showcase page. Every year they make a call for projects, and people share their creations. And so you can go and see the live versions of these things. Choose a word. Okay, submit. Oh, that didn't work. Maybe you need a real word. Okay, I'll do a real word. Bird. That. Visual synonyms. Ah, yeah, there you go. Oh, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, so I could see that, and then I can even go and look at the code. And you can see this is a much more complex project than what we've done today. Typically, sketches tend to be a bit longer than what we've done, but it doesn't have to be. Like, you can make really cool stuff with very little code, as you've seen, especially in P5.js. But yeah, people make all sorts of really fun things. you can go explore that. And I also run this challenge. This I mentioned this in the beginning. Weekly challenge. Last week the topic was squishy, and so we had some really cool submissions, including this one by Juhani. Yeah. Squishy blobs. Yeah. Any questions? By the way, yeah, the other thing I didn't mention is I also run a Discord. That's where the challenge happens, and people there are extremely skilled and talented, and generous with their time and knowledge. So if you have questions, you can also join and ask in the asking for help channel. If I'm not there to answer, somebody else is sure to. And I can really recommend participating in the challenge if you want to improve your skills.
Raphaël, are you leaving us all those links on the chat?
Yeah, it's in there. Oh, but I probably should share it also in the cohort chat, right?
Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah, I'll do that. Any other last questions? Anyone? Now is your chance. We have two more minutes. I can stay a little bit longer if people have questions, but otherwise, this is your moment.
Last goes, guys.
Okay. It was all clear. No question whatsoever. You understood everything. I covered every little part of coding possible. Anything you will ever need.
For
That's
the
good
intro.
to know. Yeah, for an intro. Yeah, that's true. All right. All right, everybody. Well, that was fun. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you. I'm sure we'll have questions later when we play around with it. So thank you for making yourself accessible. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for this. This was great.
Yeah, thank you. It's great.
Cheers, Raphael. I really appreciate the support. Thanks a lot.
Sure thing. Always, Christian. Nice to hear you.
It's great hearing you too, my friend. Cheers.
Thank you so much, Raphael. Bye.